Hi everyone, we are here with AJ Schnack, who is a filmmaker doing an incredible documentary series regarding the primaries for Vanity Fair, so you guys can definitely check that out. Before we get to the details on what's going on in the atmosphere around us, tell me a little bit about the series.
Well, we started shooting over a year ago, and the series is a 10-part series. We've published 7 episodes so far, and they follow this insane campaign year starting in Iowa last summer. And it takes you, through Iowa, through New Hampshire, all the way up until the 7th episode that we just published, the end of the California primary. So we have 3 more episodes to come. One will be about the Libertarian Convention, one will be about the Democrats, and one will be about the Republicans.
So you've experienced it all. You've obviously experienced it a little more in depth than we have, since we haven't been on the road filming everything ourselves. But it's interesting because right now we're at the DNC, and there is this big news story about Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who has been ousted as the chair of the DNC because of those WikiLeaks email leaks. And there seems to be quite a bit of division among Democrats right now. Those who supported Bernie Sanders are, very upset about the leak and don't feel like it's the right thing to do to vote for Hillary or to support her. What are your thoughts on that? Because there are Hillary supporters that are kind of belittling that thought process and saying that it's dangerous. I kind of get their perspective, but I also really understand why Bernie supporters are upset about all this.
Well, it's been interesting just watching their contest all the way through, because of course early on, I think it was naive to think that it was going to be a cakewalk for Secretary Clinton to get the nomination. There was always going to be a challenge. There were always going to be people looking for an alternative. But certainly as we got past Iowa, past New Hampshire, there was an energy and then a real rivalry between the two camps that we didn't see last fall when he was maybe 10 points back or 15 points back. So it was a close race. It was a tight race. I was at the Democratic Convention in Denver in 2008, and I remember people crying on the floor the night she said, are you in this race just for me, or are you in it for the issues we care about? And so I think that, there are definitely going to be some people who will not want to, follow Senator Sanders when he says we should support Secretary Clinton. But I think probably the vast majority will be like those people in Denver who said, yes, we will support Senator Obama. I think as far as the email leaks go, I think it's really worth a really open conversation about what the parties are. I think a lot of people have thought through the primary process that these elections are government regulated on some level. These are party functions in a lot of cases, and parties make rules that a lot of people don't agree with. And if you don't agree with them, you really have to get involved with the party if that's what you want to do and change those rules.
Yeah, I agree with you. One of the things that I really hope that our viewers take away from this entire election is, regardless of what happened to Bernie Sanders, the people who believe in his ideas and the people who believe in his movements can still continue on with the fight, and they can get involved in politics themselves. They can do what they can to get money out of politics by, joining organizations like Wolfpack, which seeks to do just that. But one of the arguments that I think the Hillary camp makes quite a bit, and I'm not sure I'm really buying, is that, hey, Bernie Sanders did manage to push Hillary Clinton to the left on some issues, and all of a sudden she's much more liberal. But, what do you think about that? Do you believe that she's actually more liberal? Do you think she's really going to fight for things like $15 an hour for minimum wage and, free public college? Or do you think it's just rhetoric at the moment?
I think Hillary has a pretty good track record on certain issues. And, she clearly was involved in protecting children and families. That was something that was a core concern of hers for many, many years. On a number of other issues that, some progressives care about, she clearly lags behind the activists of the party and then even the mainstream of the party. She's a cautious candidate in those ways. It took her a while to get on board publicly with gay marriage. It took her a while to acknowledge her vote on the Iraq War. But what we don't see from her, which we see a lot from politicians, is that once she has made this progressive evolution, she hasn't gone back the other way. And at least we haven't seen that to date. So I don't know. I think I always try to think the best of folks, even when there might be evidence to the contrary. People I think get involved in politics for all kinds of different reasons, but at heart they're human beings, and they must have some core issues that they care about, that they want to see changed, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican or a Libertarian, and hope. And I guess you always hope that is the thing that will guide them.
All right, real quick, I do want to touch a little bit on the Republican primaries,
Sure.
because, I mean, I have to admit that I would have never imagined that Donald Trump would be the front runner and then eventually become the nominee of the Republican Party. How did that play out? What was your perspective of all of that as you were covering it?
We saw Trump do a pretty large event in Iowa in July of last year. I think his campaign even says that it's was the event that really changed things for the campaign. It was their first event that kind of looked like a presidential candidate's event. It was so big they had to have an overflow room that also was completely full. And a lot of people were going there to see him out of curiosity. And I think, hearing people afterwards, you could tell that people who were maybe going to see a celebrity or thought they were going to see a celebrity left thinking like, oh, that's somebody who I could vote for. And he talked about issues in a very different way than any Republican I'd ever seen.
Like an uneducated way?
Well, no, I mean, even like taking some positions I think Democrats would agree with on trade, or, he went after the Koch brothers in his first speech in a way that I think Democrats probably wish they would have figured out how to do in 2014 when they made that a signature issue for their candidates. So I think he blurred the lines of what was a traditional Republican or Democratic perspective or stance on an issue, and I think that many Republicans thought, well, because he's doing that, we can say he's not a real Republican, he's actually a Democrat, and that will be the way to stop him. And as it turned out, of course, that wasn't the way to stop him at all. And he's now transformed their party into something that it's never been before.
So the sense that I get is that Americans on both sides, whether they're Republican or Democrat, are tired of politics as usual. They want an anti-establishment, non-veteran to represent them and represent their voices. And when I said, Donald Trump speaks about the issues in an uneducated way, I'm not saying that simply to insult him, although it does insult him. It's mostly because while he might have a lot of big talk about the issues, he doesn't really seem like he has any real detailed policy ideas when it comes to anything. He talks about how great he is, he talks about how he's winning, he talks about how he wants to build a wall, but he never really delves into what his foreign policy will be exactly, or what he plans on doing for the economy, or what he plans on doing in increasing jobs. So maybe I missed something that he might have said. Did you come across anything specific that he said policy-wise?
No, honestly, I think you're right in that has not been a policy wonk at all. He has definitely been this kind of shoot from the hip, tweet from the hip late at night. But because he's taking these policies that are so different than what the parties have been, and I think that when people compared Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, I think it was from this perspective that they were really lifting a lid off of this idea that the system was controlled by interests that contributed to both sides.
Yeah.
And I think that is an element that was sort of unique into our process, and it came at a unique time when people were really ready on both sides of the political spectrum, or I guess across the political spectrum, to hear those ideas.
Absolutely. AJ Schnack, thank you so much for joining us. Where can our audience find more of your work?
You can find nomination at Vanity Fair, so you can just search Google Vanity Fair nomination. There's a page with all 7 episodes that are up already. Previously, I made a film called Caucus, which follows the 2011-2012 Republicans in Iowa and the unlikely Rocky Balboa story of Rick Santorum, and that's on Netflix.
All right, I love it. Thank you guys. We'll see you soon.